everyone, it's Jan here again. I'm here with another tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about keying hair. It's something I've always kind of found difficult, I guess, when starting keying, and especially keying people, is the getting those details back after doing your initial key, and especially particularly in hair and that kind of really fine stuff that picks up a lot of the green. I mean, one of the first steps you can do to avoid this is keep your subject far enough away from your green screen where there's minimal spill. But even then, hair is pretty translucent in general and will pick up a lot of the light. So we're not going to go over every detail of keying today. We're going to focus specifically on doing hair. I'll kind of rough out how my setup is for the general key. I'm not getting all to the nitty gritty of keying because that's a whole can of worms, and I could probably talk for hours and hours on how to key. So let's get into that. Let's take a look at what we're going to be working with today and making. Alright, so that's my lovely wife, Mia. She also has a YouTube channel if you want to go check that out. I'll put a link in the description below. Shameless plug. But we'll be working with her lovely face today and getting a nice clean key on the hair area. As you can see here, we've got a lot of hair detail in here, and we're going how to get that and make it look nice. So here we have our original footage. I like to set my stuff up in pre-comps just to make it easier to make changes and kind of keep everything more or less organized. So what I've got here is my composite with the background in it, and this is the background we'll be compositing over. Then this is an adjustment layer we'll be working with later on. So let's go ahead and click through our matted footage. So how I like to set up this is I like to have my original footage here, and then I create a matte layer. So then I like to set that matte to Luma matte. So we're going to be creating Luma matte. It just makes it kind of easier to combine different aspects of a matte into one single matte and then apply it to the footage. Just to me, it's cleaner, it's easier to work with. I can combine things more easily within the matte rather than doing multiple keys on multiple layers. So here we have our matte in here, which I've already created prior to this, but we're going to be really focusing on is getting that hair detail back. Let me go over the basic setup of what I like to create. So here we have our original footage on our matte. So first thing I like to do is create a garbage matte for this, and as you can see on this next layer, I created that to kind of trim out what I don't want in the scene, kind of pre-keying. Then I go ahead and do my general key, which I like to do, of course, with key light here. Go and tweak the settings until I'm happy. I will add a tint, and this will create a white matte over transparent. So what I want to do actually is add a black solid to the background. And there's a specific reason for this, because I'm actually going to be making our hair detail matte in between. This in between layer is actually the hair matte right here. Let's go ahead and name this hair matte. Can't spell. And we'll name this one our key matte. And then this is just a black solid on the background, because when we're making a Luma matte, black will be cut out, white will be left visible. Let's go ahead and clear off what we've already got on here. We're going to go over each of these things over again. And so we'll go ahead and shut off a key matte. So we just have our black solid here. Let's turn on our hair matte footage. So what I've already done here on the hair matte is actually created a mask, feathered it 120 pixels, a nice round mask around the head, and kind of just moved it with our footage just so it always includes the areas of detail that we want to pull out of the footage, which in this case is Mia's hair. We can go ahead and get a nice frame where we can kind of see that hair detail. See that hair detail over there as well. So it gives us a good idea of how we're doing. Okay, so first thing I like to do is, right click on our effects panel, go to color correction, start with our black and white filter. You could also achieve a similar effect with the hue and saturation by going to the individual colors and desaturating them and doing it that way. But black and white works well for most cases. So what we're trying to accomplish now is actually brightening out the whites so that they're white and darkening out the hair so that they're black. And then, because this is already dark and this is already lighter, if we were doing this with a blonde person, you would want to do the reverse where you darken out the greens and brighten out the hair. If you have a mixed hair color, which happens sometimes, best way to do it is actually to do it both ways on 2 passes. So one for the blonde part of the hair and one for the dark part of the hair, and then you can combine them by adding them together after the fact by changing the blend modes to add. Anyway, so let's get to this. So we definitely want to brighten up our greens, our cyans, which are both going to be found in our chroma key green. We can darken out our blues and our magentas, which will mostly be in the hair and on the person. Darken out the reds as well, because those are often in hair and skin tones. And yellows are kind of in between. You can kind of use this as a final way to kind of tweak everything. Right, that looks good. And now we're going to add a quick levels here. Kind of increase that contrast a little more. Crush out the blacks to keep that more black detail. Play with the gamma here just to brighten out the whites. Okay, so next you're thinking, well, this is white, so it's going to be there still because white means opaque on a Luma matte. But we're going to go ahead and do a invert on this, so it will invert all the colors. So now black is white and white is black. And so we can kind of see our result better. We're going to add our original key back in here to cover that up. And we can kind of see where that hair's been added in. Let's pop in here. So you can see that hair detail's been added back in. And we can go on and tweak it a little bit more to get it, yeah, a little more back in there. Something else I like to do, since hair particularly is reflective and kind of translucent and picks up a lot of light, is actually go ahead and just bring up the blacks, which in this case are whites. Kind of take those and make that hair piece a little more transparent, just so it lets a little more light through. Yeah, I like how that's looking. What we can do is actually go over here now back to our matted layer over here, which includes our original footage and our matte, and it's set to Luma matte, and our matte's contained in this pre-comp. So what we can also do if you want to tweak these side by side is you can lock the composition for matted, display this comp as side by side by double clicking on it and dragging it over, and then we go look at our matted footage here. And what we can kind of do is if we want to go ahead and edit this matte while still looking at this, you can kind of do further tweaks to it, and depending on like the transparency of the hair and that kind of stuff, kind of see the result there. Change this from transparency, you kind of see that better too. If you'll notice, there's a lot of green spill around this. This is actually your friend. It really helps you composite over the footage, and we're going to quickly go over that in a moment. So this is looking good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and close this, unlock this guy. Back to matted, and then our next comp is we have our matted footage along with our background here. So we have that. First thing I like to do is add a little bit of pixel motion blur. When you key stuff, you lose, when there's motion blur, it's just so light and it blends a lot with the green that you lose a lot of it. So you definitely want to be looking to add that back in. So say when she's picking up the box, there's a fair amount of motion blur on there. So adding that motion blur back in really helps create those edges and blends them with the background a lot more. So if we turn that off, we'll kind of see like, yes, it's much more of this like hard edge. Doesn't look like it's moving as much, but that adds that blur back in. All right, and you make sure that's at shutter angle of 180, unless you're shooting at some weird shutter speed or frame rate, it's gonna be 180. And your samples, depending on how much processing you wanna do, the default is 5, and that is plenty. And vector detail, also the amount of detail you want it to go into calculating where the pixels should blur. If you crank these up, your computer will slow way down, but it depends on the result you're going for. Okay, so next thing I do is add a Lumetri color. I've already done some basic correction to help it look at more like it belongs in the scene, but we're not going to be going into too much detail on that. What we want to do is actually go ahead and we're going to be cleaning up our edges using our Lumetri color here. I have a basic correction on there. What we want to do is select the green that's here spilling on the edges. It's already blending pretty well because our background's got a lot of green, but we can make it look better. Set our key here on our HSL secondary, which stands for hue, saturation, and lightness secondary. So basically it's a keyer with color correction. I'm going to reset it back to the middle. So we want to be selecting green. So if we want to get to green quickly, we can do this. And check these. We can kind of tighten this up a little bit and kind of really see where that edge is. I like to check show mask permanently so we can kind of see more what we're doing. Yeah, like that. And then kind of blend it out a little bit. Yeah, see, it's kind of picking up all that edge stuff. Don't worry, it's not gonna look like this when we're done. I like to go to our saturation, narrow this out, see kind of where this really is and kind of hit it in the middle, and then once again blend it out a little bit and tighten it up. Lightness doesn't, in this case, isn't going to do too much. You can kind of do the same thing. Doesn't make too much difference checking this versus unchecking it. Anyway, yeah, let's just leave that off. Let's go ahead and do a little denoising. Just gonna set this like 30. I'll clean up some of the noise on the edges and blur it roughly, about 5. A little less, let's go 3. All right, you can uncheck that. So we go back to original footage, and that's kind of the selection of the color there. We got all those edge greens. So we can kind of see what we're doing. Let's bring this back up. Let's go ahead and adjust our temperature. Yeah, that one's almost about right. Tint, I want to tint this a little more toward green. Can increase the contrast in it a little bit there. Decrease the saturation. It's a little more on the money there. Yeah, getting a lot closer to that background. Let's go ahead and darken it out. This will kind of put the finishing touches on that blend. So as you can see now, it's kind of darkened out and it really matches the background to the point where you basically can't see it at all. So that's looking good to me. So after I do that, I want to leave this because doing any additional tweaking on this Lumetri plugin will mess up our HSL key. So what we want to do is actually add a second one where we can do additional tweaking and even blend it even further to make it match into its scene. So you definitely want this to focus on not necessarily your finishing stuff here with your color, but just the matching with the background, and then you can kind of do, because color correction will typically happen later where you can do it in your nonlinear editor rather than over in After Effects. So then on top of this, I actually have something which helps really smooth everything out, especially in those grainy areas, is match grain. So I just like to put that an adjustment layer over everything in here. So make sure to select your viewing mode as final output, so it won't be just a preview, which will give you this little box. Kind of want to be able to see everything. So final output, source layer, which is our original footage, which I have shied at the moment, but it is on here. All right, quick tip, shying. Shying allows you to hide layers that you're not interested in looking at any given time. So there's a bunch more stuff here, like a 3D camera track, which I kind of did a rough, not so great job on it because this is supposed to be about keying, not about motion tracking, which I could do later. If you want to see that, comment below. Yeah, so here's our actual original layer, which I have in here, but I have the shy button checked, so everything that I'm not going to be really tweaking much after the fact is hidden. The default is usually pretty good. You can tweak it a little bit, like the intensity and the size and softness, but footage is at basically the same scale and everything, so that noise should match. If you look here closely, you kind of see no grain, back with grain, kind of just helps even everything else, makes everything look like video, because that background is actually not video. It is a still photo, which I made look like video, which I could also do a tutorial on. Comment below about playing around with this, which is creating a depth map here of an image and adding it as a displacement map as well as a camera lens blur. So this allows me to blur everything with the depth map, so everything blurs more as it gets farther away. Also, the displacement map allows me to kind of like shift the perspective here of the image, which I can go into. Comment below if you want to see that. I'm still undecided on what my next tutorial will be. So, all right, let's go back over here to our composite. Looking good. And then of course, if we want to get that great cinematic look, got to do a crop, and I've thrown a nice little crop on here so we get that nice pan up to her face and that glorious ultra wide cinema scope. Gives it that little extra something that really sells that film look. And then I've thrown a LUT on here and done additional tweaking to get it to look just more cinematic, more dramatic lighting. So there's our finished product, and let's take a look again at our final results. So thanks for watching, and if you have any of your own keying tips, particularly with keying hair, or really keying in general that you'd like to share them in the comments below. I'm currently working on what's called a pseudo effect, which is essentially a preset in After Effects that you can just pull in as an animation preset and apply it. Hopefully I'll have a tutorial dropping on that soon. I'll include the links to my S-Log LUTs in the description below. And I'm also working on a couple other LUTs. I'm debating on what tutorial to do next. Like, I was thinking like how to create LUTs, a couple different ways to do that, and I would like to go over all of them that I know of, or possibly doing some more compositing related stuff. If you have any ideas of what you want to see, please comment and like and subscribe, watch, learn, do all that good stuff. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this. I'm tired as heck. It's probably past 10 o'clock. I have no idea what is out. It's 10:12. Well, so yeah, I'm gonna go to bed. Good night.